Gate 47 at Chicago O'Hare. Security guards surround a black woman clutching a boarding pass. Her voice trembles. "I paid for this seat." The gate agent smirks. "Not anymore." Then elevator doors slide open. A man in a Navy suit steps out, flanked by 6 federal officers. Someone whispers, "That's Senator Marcus Wellington." The agent's face drains of color. Before we dive into what happened next, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. If you believe everyone deserves respect regardless of who they're married to, hit that like button right now. And subscribe, because this story will show you how one moment of injustice sparked a movement that changed American air travel forever. You won't believe what happens when power meets prejudice 30,000 feet below the clouds. The morning began like any other Tuesday in the Wellington household. Dr. Simone Wellington stood in her Hyde Park brownstone kitchen, reviewing patient files while her 9-year-old twin sons argued over the last blueberry waffle. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting golden rectangles across the marble countertop, where her coffee sat cooling, forgotten. "Mom, tell Elijah," that coach said. Starting point guard. "Not him." Marcus Jr. complained, syrup dripping from his fork. Coach said, "We're both starting." Elijah shot back. Simone glanced up from the chest, X-rays spread before her, her designer glasses slipping down her nose. At 38, she carried the kind of quiet elegance that came from years of commanding operating rooms. Her natural hair was styled in an intricate twist-out that had taken her 40 minutes that morning, each coil perfectly defined. She wore minimal jewelry, just her wedding band and the small diamond studs Marcus had given her on their 10th anniversary. "You're both starting because you're both excellent," she said, her voice carrying the calm authority that made nervous residents steady their hands during complex procedures. "Now finish breakfast. The bus comes in 12 minutes. Her husband entered the kitchen, already dressed in his charcoal suit, the one he wore for important Senate hearings. Senator Marcus Wellington, at 42, still had the athletic build from his college basketball days, though his temples were now touched with distinguished gray. He kissed the top of her head, then grabbed his briefcase from the counter. "Big day," she asked. "Transportation Committee hearing. We're finally addressing airport security overreach." He poured himself coffee. "Should be interesting. Your big days usually are." She smiled, turning back to her files. "I've got the cardiac case in Boston. That little girl can't wait any longer." The case consumed her thoughts. 8-year-old Maya Chen, born with a ventricular septal defect so rare that only 3 surgeons in the country could attempt the repair. Simone had studied the scans for weeks, mapping every millimeter of the abnormal tissue, planning each incision with the precision of an architect designing a cathedral. Marcus leaned against the counter, watching her work. After 12 years of marriage, he recognized that distant look in her eyes, the one that meant she was already in the operating room in her mind, hands moving through procedures he could never fully understand. "You're going to save her life," he said, quietly. "I'm going to try." She closed the file folder. "That's all any of us can do." The boys thundered upstairs to brush their teeth, their argument about basketball temporarily abandoned. In the sudden quiet, Marcus pulled Simone close. "I hate that we're flying in different directions today," he murmured. "You'll be in Washington, I'll be in Boston, and Friday we'll both be home." She straightened his tie, a habit from their early years when he was still getting used to Senate dress codes. "Just another Tuesday." He kissed her forehead. "Call me when you land. Always do." After Marcus left for his own flight to Washington, Simone gathered her files, checked her bag twice for her medical license and hospital credentials, and called an Uber. She had specifically chosen to fly commercial, alone, without the security detail that Marcus' office insisted he needed. It was a point of pride for her. She had fought too hard to become Dr. Simone Rousseau, one of the nation's top pediatric cardiac surgeons, to hide behind her husband's title. At conferences, she used her maiden name. In hospitals, she introduced herself by her credentials, not her marriage. Most people had no idea that the skilled surgeon repairing their child's heart went home to a senator. The Uber driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, recognized her as she slid into the back seat. "Dr. Rousseau, I heard you speak at that medical conference last year. My daughter's studying to be a nurse because of people like you." Simone smiled, genuinely touched. "That's wonderful. We need more excellent nurses." "She doesn't know I picked you up. Can I get a selfie for her?" They took the photo at a red light, the driver beaming with pride. This was the recognition Simone valued, earned through years of 70-hour work weeks, hundreds of successful surgeries, papers published in the most prestigious medical journals, not because of who she married, but because of who she was. The drive to O'Hare took 35 minutes through Chicago's morning traffic. Simone used the time to mentally review the surgical procedure one more time. The ventricular septal defect required opening Maya's chest, stopping her heart, putting her on bypass, repairing the hole in the septum, reconstructing the pulmonary valve, then restarting everything. 6 hours minimum, assuming no complications. She arrived at the airport 2 hours before her 10:30 flight, exactly as she preferred. The terminal bustled with the usual Tuesday morning chaos. Business travelers rushing to make connections. Families herding small children toward security. The constant drone of announcements echoing through the vast space. At the check-in kiosk, Simone retrieved her boarding pass. Seat 2A, first class, booked 3 weeks ago under her professional name. The ticket had cost $743, charged to her personal American Express card, the one she paid from her own salary. Security moved quickly. Her medical bag, filled with files and her tablet, sailed through the X-ray without issue. She collected her belongings, slipped her shoes back on, and headed toward her gate. She stopped at a coffee shop, ordered a medium dark roast, and found a quiet corner to review her notes one final time. Around her, life continued in its ordinary patterns. A businessman argued loudly on his phone about quarterly projections. A young mother tried to console a crying toddler. 2 college students debated whether they had time for Starbucks before boarding. Simone texted Marcus, "Boarding soon. Love you." His reply came quickly. "Knock them dead, Dr. Rousseau. That little girl is lucky to have you." She smiled at her phone, feeling the familiar warmth that came from being truly seen by someone. Marcus understood her need for professional independence, never once suggesting she should use his influence to advance her career. It was one of the 1,000 reasons she loved him. At 9:45, she gathered her things and walked toward Gate 47. The morning sun slanted through the terminal windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. Travelers rushed past, each absorbed in their own journeys, their own urgent destinations. Simone had no way of knowing that in the next 45 minutes, her understanding of her place in America would shatter like glass. That the ordinary Tuesday morning she was living through was about to become the day that changed everything. She approached Gate 47, boarding pass in hand, ready for a routine flight to save a child's life. The universe had other plans. Gate 47 hummed with the usual pre-boarding energy. Simone settled into a seat near the window, pulling out her tablet to review Maya's latest blood work one more time. The results looked promising, all the indicators suggesting the child's body would handle the stress of major surgery. Behind the desk, the gate agent moved with brisk efficiency. Kellyanne Pritchard, according to her name tag, appeared to be in her mid-40s with blonde hair pulled into a severe ponytail that made her angular face look even sharper. An American flag pin adorned her lapel, positioned with military precision. Simone barely noticed her, focused instead on the numbers on her screen. Red blood cell count, platelet levels, clotting factors. Each one a piece of the puzzle that would determine how she approached the surgery. Kellyanna's voice drifted over, speaking into her phone with that particular tone of deference reserved for valued customers. Yes, Mr. Carmichael, I completely understand. You're one of our Platinum Elite members, and we absolutely appreciate your loyalty. We'll handle this situation right away. Simone's attention remained on her work. She had learned long ago to tune out the background noise of airports, the endless conversations and announcements that meant nothing to her mission. I can have that first-class seat ready for you within 10 minutes. Kellyanne continued, her voice sugary sweet. Yes, sir. You just relax in the lounge, and I'll text you when everything is arranged. 30 minutes before boarding, Kellyanne stepped out from behind the desk, her eyes scanning the gate area with predatory focus. They landed on Simone, and something shifted in her expression. A calculation happening behind the professional smile. She walked directly towards Simone, heels clicking against the tile floor. Mom, Kellyanne's voice carried artificial politeness. I need to see your boarding pass, please. Simone looked up, slightly surprised. Is there a problem? Just a routine check. Kellyanne held out her hand expectantly. Simone retrieved the boarding pass from her bag and handed it over, already turning back to her tablet. These random checks happened sometimes. Security theater to make passengers feel safe. Kellyanne studied the pass for a long moment, her lips pressing into a thin line. There's been an issue with your ticket. Now Simone gave her full attention. What kind of issue? Our system is showing that this ticket was purchased with a fraudulent credit card. Kellyanne's tone remained professionally neutral, but something cold lurked beneath the words. Simone's stomach dropped, that familiar feeling of the ground shifting beneath her feet. That's impossible. I purchased this ticket 3 weeks ago with my personal American Express card. These situations happen more often than you'd think. Kellyanne barely glanced at her. People use stolen cards, the charges don't get flagged immediately. I didn't use a stolen card. Simone kept her voice measured, despite the anger beginning to simmer in her chest. I used my own card. There must be a mistake in your system. She pulled out her phone, navigating to her email with fingers that wanted to tremble but refused to show weakness. Here's my confirmation email, sent the day I purchased the ticket. Kellyanne glanced at the screen for less than 2 seconds. Those can be faked. Faked. Simone's voice rose slightly. Why would I fake a confirmation email? I'm not accusing you of anything, ma'am. I'm simply informing you that your ticket has been flagged as fraudulent. You'll need to purchase a new ticket if you wish to board this flight. Around them, other passengers were beginning to notice. Conversations quieted. Heads turned. That particular quality of attention that comes when people sense conflict brewing. Simone forced herself to breathe slowly. I'm a physician. I have an emergency surgical consultation in Boston this afternoon. A child's life depends on me being there. Then I suggest you resolve this ticket issue quickly. Kellyanne's sympathy sounded rehearsed, empty. Or you could take a later flight. There is no later flight. The surgery is scheduled for 4 o'clock. Simone stood now, meeting Kellyanne's eyes directly. Please check your system again. This is clearly an error. I've already checked. Multiple times. Kellyanne crossed her arms. The ticket is flagged. Unless you can provide proof of legitimate purchase, I cannot allow you to board. Simone pulled out her wallet, extracted her American Express card. Here, this is the card I used. Call American Express. They'll confirm the charge was legitimate. Kellyanne didn't even look at the card. That's not airline protocol. Then what is your protocol for resolving obvious errors? You can purchase a new ticket at full price, or you can file a dispute with our customer service department, which typically takes 7 to 10 business days to resolve. 7 to 10 business days. Maya Chen would be dead by then. Simone's mind raced through options. She could call Marcus, one phone call, and this would end. But she had spent her entire life proving she didn't need rescue, didn't need her husband's power to navigate the world. She was Dr. Simone Rousseau, a woman who had earned every achievement through her own merit. "I want to speak to your supervisor," Simone said firmly. "I am the supervisor on duty for this gate." Kellyanne's smile never wavered. "Then I want to speak to airport management. You're certainly welcome to file a complaint, but it won't change the status of your ticket." Movement caught Simone's peripheral vision. A man approached the desk, silver-haired, expensive watch glinting in the fluorescent light. Gerald Carmichael, though Simone didn't know his name yet. Kellyanne's entire demeanor transformed, like watching a mask slip on. "Mr. Carmichael, thank you so much for your patience. Is my upgrade ready?" Gerald barely glanced at Simone. "Almost, sir. I'm just clearing the seat for you now." Kellyanne gestured toward Simone with barely concealed satisfaction. The pieces clicked together in Simone's mind with sickening clarity. This wasn't about a fraudulent ticket. This was about giving her seat to him. "You're removing me to give my seat to him." Simone's voice cut through the gate area. "As I've explained, ma'am, your ticket is flagged as fraudulent. My ticket is perfectly legitimate, and you know it." Simone stepped closer, her voice still controlled, but carrying the weight of barely contained fury. "You want to give seat 2A to a Platinum Elite member, so you're inventing a reason to remove me." Gerald shifted uncomfortably. "Is there a problem here?" "No, sir," Kellyanne assured him quickly. "Just dealing with an unauthorized passenger. Your seat will be ready momentarily." "I am authorized." Simone's hands clenched at her sides. "I am Dr. Simone Wellington, and I paid full price for seat 2, 3 weeks ago." The name Wellington hung in the air. Kellyanne's eyes flickered with something. Recognition, perhaps, but she showed no sign of backing down. "If you don't comply with my instructions, you'll be forced to call security," Kellyanne said, her voice hardening. Around them, the crowd had grown. Phones appeared, pointing in their direction. The modern reflex: document everything, worry about context later. Simone faced a choice. She could surrender, call Marcus, let his power solve this problem. Or she could stand her ground, fight this battle on her own terms, even if it meant missing her flight and failing Maya. Pride warred with practicality. Her entire identity was built on being her own person, on succeeding without using her husband's influence. But a child's life hung in the balance. "Call security," Simone said quietly. "But I want everything documented. Every word you've said, every accusation you've made. I want this on record." Kellyanne smiled, and there was triumph in it. "As you wish, ma'am." She picked up her phone, pressed a button, spoke into it with exaggerated courtesy. "Security to gate 47. Please. We have a passenger refusing to comply with airline instructions." Simone stood straight, her medical bag clutched in one hand, her dignity wrapped around her like armor. She had done nothing wrong. She would not be moved. Behind her, someone whispered, "Why doesn't she just take another seat?" Someone else responded, "Maybe she's trying to cause a scene." The judgment washed over her, familiar as an old coat. Always the troublemaker, always making it about race, always refusing to just go along, just comply, just accept less than what she'd paid for. 2 security officers appeared within minutes, their presence immediately changing the atmosphere of the gate area. Everything Simone thought she knew about her place in America was about to be tested. The security officers materialized through the crowd like sharks cutting through water. Officer Brennan led the way. Stocky and red-faced, his hand resting on his belt with practiced authority. Behind him came Officer Lopez, younger, his eyes darting between Simone and Kellyanne with visible uncertainty. "What's the situation?" Brennan's voice carried that particular blend of boredom and aggression that comes from dealing with passenger disputes every day. Kellyanne spoke first, her voice dripping with professional concern. "This passenger is refusing to deplane after her ticket was flagged as fraudulent. I've explained the situation multiple times, but she's become combative and disruptive." "Combative?" Simone's voice rose despite her efforts to remain calm. "I've done nothing but ask you to verify what you already know is true. My ticket is legitimate." Brennan turned to her, his expression already hardened into judgment. "Mom, I'm going to need you to gather your belongings and come with us. I'm not going anywhere until someone verifies my ticket." Simone stood her ground. "I paid for this seat. I have confirmation. I have my credit card. Everything is legitimate, and she knows it." Lopez stepped forward, his voice quieter than his partner's. "Can I see your boarding pass and ID?" Simone handed them over, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Lopez examined both carefully, then looked at his tablet, presumably checking some database. "Officer, this boarding pass looks legitimate to me," Lopez said, showing his screen to Brennan. Brennan barely glanced at it. "The gate agent has final authority over boarding decisions. If she says the ticket is fraudulent, that's her call. But it's not fraudulent." Simone's frustration broke through her careful control. "She's removing me to give my seat to him." She pointed at Gerald Carmichael, who had backed away slightly, suddenly interested in his phone. "Sir, is this true?" Lopez turned to Kellyanne. Kellyanne's expression radiated offended dignity. "I resent the implication. I'm simply following airline protocol for suspected fraud." "There is no suspected fraud," Simone insisted. "She invented this accusation to clear my seat. Ask her why seat 2 suddenly needs to be cleared. Ask her who it's being cleared for." A voice from the crowd, a young black woman in business attire, called out, "I've been watching this whole thing. The lady didn't do anything wrong. The agent just walked up and started accusing her." Kellyanne's jaw tightened. "Miss, please don't interfere in airline operations." An older white man near the window spoke up, his voice carrying the certainty of someone used to being heard. "Just cooperate with the officers. If you're innocent, you'll get this sorted out later." "I shouldn't have to sort it out later," Simone replied, her voice shaking now with barely controlled rage. "I should be able to board the flight I paid for." Another passenger, a middle-aged white woman, muttered just loud enough to be heard, "She's making such a scene. Just take another seat." The phones kept recording. Simone could see herself reflected in dozens of screens, a black woman surrounded by security, her natural hair and designer clothes apparently not enough armor against presumption of guilt. Brennan stepped closer, his voice dropping to that tone meant to sound reasonable while delivering an ultimatum. "Ma'am, you have two choices. You can leave voluntarily, or we'll escort you out. Either way, you're not boarding this aircraft." "This is racial profiling," Simone said clearly, wanting every phone to catch it. "You're removing me because she decided my seat belongs to a white man. This has nothing to do with race." Kellyanne protested, her voice hitting a higher register. "This is about following procedures. Your procedures are discriminatory." Simone turned to address the crowd directly, medical training kicking in, the same calm she used to explain complex diagnoses to frightened parents. "My name is Dr. Simone Rousseau. I'm a pediatric cardiac surgeon. There's an 8-year-old girl in Boston who will die without surgery, and I'm one of 3 people in this country who can save her. I paid $743 for seat 2, 3 weeks ago. I have done nothing wrong." The crowd shifted. uncomfortable energy rippling through them. Some looked sympathetic, others annoyed. Most just wanted the drama to end so they could board their flight. Brennan reached for Simone's arm. "That's enough. Let's go." Simone pulled back instinctively. "Don't touch me. Then walk on your own." Brennan's face flushed deeper red. Lopez touched his partner's shoulder. "Brennan, maybe we should call a supervisor." "We don't need a supervisor." Brennan's hand moved toward his handcuffs. Shay's refusing a lawful order to deplane. Simone's mind raced through scenarios, each worse than the last. If they arrested her, she'd miss the flight anyway. She'd be detained, questioned, possibly charged. Even if everything got dropped later, Maya would be dead by then. She thought about her sons, watching news coverage of their mother being dragged from an airport. She thought about Marcus, receiving a call that his wife had been arrested. She thought about every black parent who had ever told their child, "Just comply. Just survive. Well, fight it later." Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Probably Marcus, texting to wish her a safe flight, completely unaware that she was seconds away from being handcuffed. The gate area had gone almost silent, everyone watching, waiting for the inevitable conclusion. The black woman gets removed. The white man gets her seat. The system protects itself. Simone opened her mouth to speak, to make one final appeal to reason, when a sound cut through the tension. The elevator across the terminal dinged. The doors slid open, and everything changed. A man in a navy suit stepped out, flanked by 6 people in dark suits and earpieces, the kind of security detail that doesn't work for ordinary citizens, the kind that moves with military precision, scanning the area, establishing perimeters. Someone in the crowd gasped. "That's Senator Wellington." Another voice, awed, "Oh my God." Kellyanne's face drained of color so fast it looked like someone had pulled a plug. Officer Brennan's hand dropped from his handcuffs. Marcus Wellington crossed the terminal in long strides, his security team fanning out around him like a protective constellation. His face was a mask of controlled fury, and Simone knew that expression. She'd seen it when a hospital administrator tried to cut funding for the pediatric wing, when a colleague made a dismissive comment about affirmative action, when injustice showed its face and thought it could hide. Her husband had arrived, and the balance of power had just shifted, like a tectonic plate, settling into a new position. Marcus covered the distance between the elevator and gate 47 in seconds. His chief of staff, Patricia Okonkwo, a sharp-featured Nigerian-American woman in her 50s, kept pace beside him, tablet already in hand. The security detail moved with them, professional and silent, their presence transforming the casual chaos of the gate into something that felt suddenly official, governmental, weighted with consequence. The crowd parted without being asked. Marcus' eyes found Simone first, scanning her quickly for injury, for harm. Their gazes locked, and in that moment, she felt a complex tangle of emotions: relief, frustration, anger that she'd needed rescue, gratitude that rescue had come. "What's happening here?" Marcus' voice was quiet, but it carried through the gate area like a judge's gavel. Kellyanne tried to speak, her mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. Officer Brennan recovered first, straightening his posture, hand moving away from his belt. Senator Wellington, "We're handling a passenger dispute." "Standard procedure. Standard procedure." Marcus turned his full attention to Brennan, and the officer actually took a step back. "Standard procedure is to surround my wife with security after falsely accusing her of credit card fraud." "Your wife?" Brennan's eyes widened. "Dr. Simone Wellington." Marcus moved to stand beside Simone, not touching her, respecting her space, but making his presence a shield. "We've been married 12 years. Did she mention that?" "She said her name was Rousseau," Kellyanne whispered. Her professional name. Patricia interjected smoothly, her British accented voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. Dr. Rousseau is one of the nation's leading pediatric cardiac surgeons. She maintains her maiden name in medical contexts. Surely that's not grounds for removal from a flight. What do you think should happen to gate agents who abuse their power? Comment number 1. If you believe Kellyanne should face serious consequences for her actions. And while you're here, smash that like button if you think every passenger deserves respect regardless of their title or connections. Don't forget to subscribe, because what happens next will restore your faith in justice. Now, what will Marcus discover when Patricia pulls up Kellyanne's employment history? Will this turn out to be an isolated incident? Or is there a darker pattern hiding beneath the surface? Let's find out. Marcus turned to Kellyanne, his expression hardening. Show me the ticket issue you mentioned. Senator, Kellyanne's hand trembled as she reached for her computer. The system indicated, "Show me." Not a request. Kellyanne's fingers fumbled across the keyboard. Seconds stretched into uncomfortable silence as she pulled up Simone's reservation. Her face went from pale to ashen as she stared at the screen. "There's no flag," Lopez said quietly, looking over her shoulder at the monitor. "The ticket shows as valid. There was a flag earlier." Kellyanne insisted, but her voice had lost all conviction. Patricia was already at work, on her tablet, fingers moving with practiced speed. "I'm looking at the airline system right now, directly from the FAA database. Dr. Wellington's ticket has never been flagged. Not today. Not ever. It was purchased on October 3rd at 2:47 p.m., charged to an American Express card ending in 4892. Payment cleared same day. Would you like me to pull the bank records?" "That won't be necessary," Marcus said coldly. "What I want is an explanation for why my wife was accused of fraud when no fraud occurred." Gerald Carmichael, who had been trying to fade into the background, suddenly became very interesting to Marcus. "Mr. Carmichael, is it?" Marcus' voice carried razor-sharp politeness. "I couldn't help but notice you're involved in this situation." "I didn't do anything," Gerald protested, his expensive watch suddenly seeming to weigh heavy on his wrist. "I just wanted an upgrade." "An upgrade to which seat, specifically?" Gerald's silence answered the question. Patricia spoke up, reading from her tablet. "Mr. Gerald Carmichael, Platinum Elite member since 2019. You've received 17 unexpected upgrades in the past 8 months, Mr. Carmichael. All from this gate agent. All occurring when she removed another passenger from first class. Quite the streak of good fortune." The crowd murmured. Phones still recording, capturing every word. Marcus turned back to Kellyanne. "You fabricated a fraud accusation to remove my wife from her seat so you could give it to him." "I didn't fabricate anything." Kellyanne's voice rose desperately. "There was a system error, I thought." "You thought what?" Simone spoke for the first time since Marcus arrived, her voice steady now, backed by his presence, but standing in her own power. "You thought I didn't belong in first class? You thought my ticket must be fraudulent? You thought I wouldn't fight back." Kellyanne's mouth worked soundlessly. "Or maybe," Simone continued, "you saw a black woman sitting alone and decided she was an easy target. Someone you could move aside for a more valuable customer. Someone who wouldn't have a senator husband to defend her." The words hung in the air, undeniable in their truth. Patricia's fingers never stopped moving across her tablet. "Senator, pulling Miss Pritchard's employment record now. There appear to be multiple complaints." "How many?" Marcus asked. 7 documented complaints in the past 2 years. Patricia's voice remained professionally neutral, but her eyes blazed. 5 of those complaints came from passengers of color. All were dismissed as misunderstandings. Marcus' jaw tightened. "Read them," Patricia began. March 26, 2023. Passenger complaint from Mrs. Aisha Johnson. Quote, Agent Pritchard accused me of stealing my daughter's iPad. Insisted I provide proof of purchase before allowing us to board. The iPad was registered to my name in the Apple system. End quote. She continued, June 14, 2023. Mr. Raj Patel, quote, Agent questioned the validity of my U.S. passport, insisted I must have a visa despite being a natural-born citizen. She called security before checking her own database. End quote. September 9, 2023. Dr. Chen Liu, quote, Agent Pritchard insisted my Louis Vuitton bag must be counterfeit because, in her words, those bags are very expensive. She threatened to confiscate it unless I could prove authenticity. End quote. With each complaint, Kellyanne seemed to shrink. The crowd's energy shifted, murmurs of disgust replacing the earlier uncertainty. This is a pattern, Marcus stated flatly, not a mistake. A pattern of racial profiling that your airline has ignored for 2 years. A new voice entered the scene. Senator Wellington, M. James Thornton, Terminal Director. I just received word of this situation. A thin man in his 50s hurried toward them, his face flushed with either exertion or panic. Please accept my deepest apologies for this incident. Your apologies aren't enough, Mr. Thornton. Marcus' voice could have cut steel. My wife was humiliated, threatened with arrest, and prevented from boarding a flight to save a child's life. Because of an employee with a documented history of discrimination that your organization chose to ignore. Thornton's eyes darted to Kellyanne, then back to Marcus. We had no idea the complaints were related. 7 complaints in 2 years. 5 from passengers of color. All from the same employee. And you had no idea. Simone's voice carried the full weight of her exhaustion and fury. Or did you just not care to look? News crews had begun to arrive, alerted by the social media posts already spreading through Twitter and Instagram. A reporter pushed forward with a microphone. Senator Wellington, can you comment on what happened here? Marcus turned to face the cameras, and Simone saw him shift into his public mode, the senator who had won his seat by speaking truth to power. My wife, Dr. Simone Wellington, is one of this nation's finest pediatric cardiac surgeons. She was traveling to Boston today to perform emergency surgery on an 8-year-old girl. Instead of being treated with the respect every paying passenger deserves, she was accused of fraud, surrounded by security, and threatened with arrest. Why? Because a gate agent decided her seat belonged to someone else, someone who looked different. The cameras swung to Simone. The reporter called out, Dr. Wellington, how do you feel right now? Simone paused, gathering her thoughts, aware that whatever she said would be replayed endlessly. I feel tired. Tired of proving I belong in spaces I've paid to occupy. Tired of being presumed guilty until proven innocent. Tired of knowing that my sons will grow up in a country that sees them as threats before seeing them as children. Her voice cracked slightly. That little girl in Boston deserves a surgeon who arrives focused and confident. Instead, he'll arrive shaken and angry. And for what? So a gate agent could curry favor with a frequent flyer. The crowd had swelled now. Travelers from other gates drawn by the commotion. Some filmed. Some watched with sympathy. Others with suspicion. Kellyanne tried one more time to defend herself. I was following protocol. I treat everyone the same. Patricia looked up from her tablet, her expression glacial. The data suggests otherwise, Miss Pritchard. 17 upgrades, all granted by removing other passengers, 15 of whom were people of color. The statistical probability of that being random is less than 0.03%. I never looked at race, Kellyanne protested. Perhaps not consciously, Simone said quietly. But you looked at me, and saw someone who wouldn't fight back. Someone whose seat could be taken. Someone disposable. Officer Lopez spoke up, his voice heavy with something that might have been shame. "Mom, I apologize. We should have verified everything before approaching you." "Yes," Simone agreed. "You should have." Officer Brennan remained silent, his face still red, but now with embarrassment rather than anger. Marcus addressed Thornton again. "This ends now. Not with apologies. With action." "Of course, Senator. What would you suggest?" "I'm not suggesting. I'm informing you what will happen." Marcus' voice carried absolute authority. "Miss Pritchard will be terminated immediately. Every passenger she removed will be contacted and compensated. Your boarding practices will be audited across all hubs, and there will be independent oversight of discrimination complaints going forward." "Senator, those are significant changes that require approval from." "Then get approval, or my office will draft legislation making them mandatory for every airline operating in this country." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Do we understand each other?" Thornton swallowed hard. "Yes, Senator." Simone checked her watch. "I need to get to Boston." Marcus turned to her. "Take my plane." "No." Simone's voice was firm. "I'm taking this flight. In my seat. The one I paid for." She looked at Kellyanne, meeting her eyes directly. "Anyone who objects can explain why to the cameras." No one objected. Within minutes, Gate 47 transformed from a routine boarding area into something resembling a crime scene. Patricia had summoned additional members of Marcus' staff, young lawyers and policy experts who arrived with laptops and began documenting everything. Thornton stood to the side, phone pressed to his ear, presumably calling his superiors to warn them that a Category 5 political storm was about to hit. Patricia pulled up a chair and opened her laptop fully, her fingers flying across the keyboard with the efficiency of someone who had spent decades uncovering inconvenient truths. "Senator, I'm accessing the airline's internal communications now," she said, her voice loud enough for the gathered crowd and news cameras to hear. "With the FAA's database access, your committee privileges provide, of course." Marcus nodded, standing beside Simone. His hand hovered near hers, wanting to touch, but respecting her need to stand independently. "There's an email chain here," Patricia continued, her eyes narrowing as she read. "Between Miss Pritchard and her supervisor, dated yesterday." She turned the screen so the nearest camera could catch it, reading aloud. Subject line: Seat Inventory Management. The supervisor, a Mr. Dale Hendricks, writes, "We're overbooked in first class tomorrow. Be creative with seat assignments." Kellyanne's face went from white to gray. Patricia continued reading. Miss Pritchard replies, "Understood. I know how to clear seats when needed." She paused, letting that sink in. The supervisor responds, "Good. Platinum elites take priority." And Miss Pritchard's final message, "Always." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. This wasn't a simple mistake anymore. This was policy. "Where's Mr. Hendricks now?" Marcus asked Thornton. I believe Hayes, at our operations center." Thornton looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Get him here, now." While they waited, Patricia continued digging. Cross-referencing flight manifests with passenger complaints now. Over the past 6 months, Miss Pritchard has cleared 43 first-class seats. She looked up, her expression grim. 38 of those passengers were people of color. The reasons varied: fraudulent tickets, disruptive behavior, ticketing errors. Every single complaint was later investigated and found to be baseless. "And the consequences?" Simone asked. "None. The complaints went to regional human resources. They were classified as customer service issues. not discrimination. No pattern was ever identified, because no one was looking for a pattern. A young black man in the crowd spoke up. "This happened to me in Atlanta last year. They said my ticket had an error, made me buy a new one. I complained, but nobody cared." An older Latina woman raised her hand. "Denver. 3 months ago. They said I was agitated when I questioned why they were moving me to a middle seat in economy. I'd paid for first class." More voices joined. Travelers who had been victimized by a system designed to hide discrimination behind customer service language. Patricia made notes, collecting names and flight information. "Well, need your details. All of you. This is going to be a class action situation." Dale Hendricks arrived 15 minutes later, escorted by airport security. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s, with thinning hair and a face that suggested he was more accustomed to giving orders than answering questions. "Senator Wellington." He extended his hand, which Marcus ignored. "I'm sure we can resolve this misunderstanding. We have your emails," Marcus said flatly. Hendricks' hand dropped. "Those were taken out of context." "What context makes be creative with seat assignments acceptable?" Simone asked. "We were simply discussing how to manage overbooking situations," Hendricks said, his voice taking on the rehearsed quality of corporate speak. "Airlines oversell flights. It's standard practice. We have to make decisions about who gets priority. Based on what criteria?" Patricia asked. "Loyalty status. Ticket class. Time of purchase. Not race." Marcus pressed. "Absolutely not race." Hendricks looked genuinely offended. "We have very strict anti-discrimination policies." "Then explain why 38 of the 43 passengers Miss Pritchard removed were people of color," Patricia said, turning her laptop to show him the data. Hendricks' face went through several color changes. That must be coincidental. The statistical probability of that being coincidence is 0.03%. Patricia repeated. "Would you like to try again?" Hendricks looked at Kellyanne, who seemed to be trying to disappear into her uniform. "Kellyanne, did you consider race when making boarding decisions?" "No." Kellyanne's voice cracked. "I was doing what you told me to do. You said keep Platinum members happy. You said some passengers complain more than others. You said use my judgment. I never told you to discriminate." Hendricks shot back. "You didn't have to say it directly." Kellyanne's composure shattered completely. "Everyone knew what you meant. Clear the difficult passengers, the ones who ask questions, the ones who don't look like they belong in first class." The admission hung in the air, captured by a dozen phone cameras. Thornton finally found his spine. "Both of you are terminated. Effective immediately. Security will escort you from the premises." "You can't fire me for following orders," Hendricks protested. "Watch me," Thornton replied, his voice shaking slightly. As security led Kellyanne and Hendricks away, Marcus turned to Thornton. "Firing them isn't enough. What more do you want, Senator?" "I want every passenger they victimized, contacted, and fully compensated. I want a complete audit of your boarding practices at every hub. I want mandatory bias training for all customer-facing staff, conducted by independent experts, not airline employees. I want quarterly reports on passenger complaints, broken down by race, submitted to an independent oversight board." "Senator, these are massive systemic changes that will cost millions." "Then it will cost millions," Marcus interrupted. "Consider it the price of ignoring discrimination for profit." A reporter called out, "Senator, will you be introducing legislation? If voluntary compliance doesn't happen immediately?" "Yes. The Fair Skies Act. It will mandate everything I just described for every airline operating in American airspace." Simone watched her husband work, saw the political machinery clicking into place. This was why she'd fallen in love with him, this fierce commitment to justice. but part of her ached that it took a senator's intervention to get basic human decency. Patricia approached Simone quietly. The other passengers who spoke up, the ones who experienced similar treatment. Would you be willing to serve as a named plaintiff in a class action suit? I'm a surgeon, not an activist, Simone replied. With respect, Dr. Wellington, you became an activist the moment they tried to take your seat. The question is whether you'll help make sure it doesn't happen to others. Simone looked around the gate area. The young black businessman who'd been removed in Atlanta, the Latina mother from Denver, the elderly black woman who'd mentioned Houston, all of them looking at her with hope, as if her presence, her husband's power, might finally force the system to see them. She thought about her sons, about the men they would become, about the world she wanted them to inherit. Yes, she said finally, I'll be the plaintiff. Patricia smiled, the first genuine warmth shed shown since arriving. Then, let's make history. Dr. Wellington. Simone checked her watch again. After I save a little girl's life. Marcus kissed her forehead. I have to get to Washington. Patricia will fly with you to Boston. I don't need a security detail to board a plane, Simone protested. I know, but I need to know you're safe. Humor me. Simone nodded, too exhausted to argue. The boarding announcement finally came. All passengers for Flight 447 to Boston were now boarding all zones. Simone stood, gathering her medical bag. The crowd parted for her, some applauding quietly, others simply watching with curiosity or sympathy. She walked to the gate, boarding pass in hand. The new gate agent, a young Asian woman who'd been brought in to replace Kelly Ann, scanned it with trembling hands. Dr. Wellington, welcome aboard. I'm so sorry for what happened to you. Thank you, Simone replied simply. She walked down the jetway, every step feeling surreal. Behind her, she could hear Marcus giving a statement to the press. Ahead, a plane waited to take her to a child who needed her skills. She had started this morning as Dr. Simone Rousseau, a surgeon traveling to save a life. She was ending it as Dr. Simone Wellington, a symbol of everything wrong with American air travel, and maybe, possibly, the catalyst for change. She wasn't sure which identity felt more uncomfortable. Simone settled into seat 2A, the leather cool against her back. The seat Shed paid for. The seat they'd tried to take. It felt simultaneously like victory and exhaustion. Patricia slid into 2B, the seat that had been meant for Gerald Carmichael. She opened her laptop immediately, fingers already flying across the keyboard before the flight attendants finished their safety demonstration. I'm sorry to work during the flight, Patricia said, not looking up from her screen. But this is bigger than we thought. How much bigger? Simone asked, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know. I've been running the data across multiple airlines, not just Atlas. Similar patterns at United, American, Delta, Southwest. Passengers of color removed at disproportionate rates, always justified by policy language. Disruptive behavior. Ticketing irregularities. Safety concerns. Patricia's accent grew more pronounced as her anger built. All of it code for "we don't think you belong here." The plane pushed back from the gate. Simone watched through the window as Chicago fell away beneath them. The city where Shed built her career, raised her children, thought she understood her place in the world. Patricia continued scrolling through data. The financial incentive is obvious. Airlines overbook because some percentage of passengers always miss flights. But they've realized they can overbook even more aggressively if they're strategic about who they remove when flights are full. Remove people who won't fight back, Simone said quietly. Exactly. Remove people without status, without connections, without the resources to sue. And if 90% of those people happen to be black or brown, well, that's just how the algorithm works, isn't it? Patricia's voice dripped sarcasm. A flight attendant approached, a young white woman with sympathetic eyes. Dr. Wellington? The captain wanted me to offer you champagne. Compliments of the house. Simone stared at the glass being offered. I didn't order champagne. He wanted to apologize on behalf of the airline. The irony wasn't lost on Simone. She'd been accused of fraud, surrounded by security, threatened with arrest. Now she was being given free champagne, as if that somehow balanced the scales. No, thank you, she said firmly. The flight attendant looked uncertain, the glass still extended. Are you sure? It's our finest vintage. I'm sure. All I wanted was the seat I paid for. I don't need compensation. I need the system to change. The attendant retreated, and Patricia smiled slightly. You're going to be good at this. At what? Being the face of change. Like it or not, you're about to become very public. Simone pulled out her phone, which Shed silenced during the confrontation. 73 missed calls. Messages from colleagues, friends, family members, who'd seen the videos already spreading across social media. One text from Marcus stood out. The video has 12 million views. You're trending number 2 worldwide. She opened Twitter, immediately regretting it. Her name was everywhere, split into warring camps. Supporters praising her courage, detractors claiming Shed played the race card. Conspiracy theorists suggesting the whole thing was staged for political points. She probably was using a stolen card. One tweet read. Another. Her husband is just protecting her. She should be arrested for causing a disturbance. Why does she need first class anyway? So entitled. Each comment was a small cut. Death by 1,000 dismissals. Shed known this would happen. Marrying a senator meant living in public scrutiny. But knowing didn't make it hurt less. Patricia glanced at her screen. Daunt read the comments. Too late. For what it's worth, the supportive messages outnumber the negative ones 3-1. And the video evidence is crystal clear. Public opinion is on your side. Public opinion shifts, like sand. Simone replied. Tomorrow there'll be some new outrage, and everyone will forget. Not if we don't let them forget. Patricia pulled up a new document. Drafting the complaint for the class action lawsuit now. With your permission, I'd like to include testimony from the other passengers who came forward today. Simone thought about the young black businessman from Atlanta. The determination in his eyes when Head shared his story. The Latina mother from Denver, her voice shaking with suppressed anger. All the invisible victims of a system designed to exploit their powerlessness. Yes, she said. Include everyone. Her phone buzzed. A call from Boston Children's Hospital. She answered immediately. Dr. Rousseau. It's Lynn Chen, Maya's mother. We saw what happened on the news. Are you okay? The genuine concern in Lynn's voice nearly broke Simone's composure. Here was a mother whose daughter lay in a hospital bed with a failing heart, and she was worried about the surgeon. I'm fine, Mrs. Chen. I'm on my way. The surgery will proceed as scheduled. Thank you. And Dr. Rousseau? What they did to you was wrong. Maya and I have been talking about it. She says you're brave. Simone's eyes burned with unshed tears. Your daughter is the brave one. I'll see you soon. She ended the call and turned to look out the window. Clouds stretched endlessly, white and pure, untouched by the ugliness of human systems. Patricia's voice interrupted her thoughts. I've found something else. Internal memos from airline industry lobbying groups. They've been discussing the profitability of strategic passenger removal for years. They call it yield optimization. Optimization, Simone repeated bitterly. What a sanitized word for discrimination. The memos are quite explicit. They discuss targeting passengers who are statistically less likely to complain or sue: single mothers, elderly travelers, people with language barriers, immigrants, and yes, people of color. Patricia turned her screen to show a highlighted passage. Simone read, "Passengers from lower socioeconomic backgrounds or minority communities demonstrate lower complaint follow-through rates. Strategic removal during overbooking situations can be focused on these demographics to minimize corporate liability while maximizing revenue." That's not just discrimination, Simone said. That's premeditated, calculated exploitation. Yes. And it's systemic across the industry. How long has this been going on? Based on these documents? At least 7 years. Possibly longer. Simone leaned back in her seat, overwhelmed by the scope of it. This wasn't about one racist gate agent. This was about an entire industry that had mathematically calculated how to profit from bigotry. A notification popped up on her phone. A news alert. Senator Wellington threatens airline industry overhaul after wife's discrimination ordeal. Another. Dr. Simone Wellington, the surgeon who became a civil rights symbol. She wasn't ready to be a symbol. She'd spent her whole career being just a surgeon, defined by her skills rather than her skin. Now she was being forced into a role she'd never wanted, representing every black woman who'd ever been told she didn't belong. Patricia must have sensed her thoughts. "You didn't ask for this." "No. But you're exactly the right person to carry it." "Why me?" "Because you have credentials they can't dismiss. Education they respect. A husband with power they fear. You're the perfect plaintiff because you had every advantage, and they still tried to erase you." Patricia's voice softened. "If they'll do this to you, they'll do it to anyone." Simone knew she was right. That was the terrible arithmetic of it. She'd climbed every ladder, earned every degree, married a senator, and still she'd been presumed guilty, deemed disposable, marked for removal. What chance did someone without her privileges have? The flight attendant returned, this time with a handwritten note. "Dr. Wellington, this is from passenger 12C. Simone unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky but determined. "Thank you for fighting. They did this to my daughter last year. Nobody believed her. Now maybe they will." She looked back through the cabin. An elderly black woman in row 12 gave her a small nod. More notes came throughout the flight. Stories of humiliation, of being moved to make room for white passengers, of complaints dismissed, of apologies never given. Each one, a data point, in a pattern too large to ignore. By the time they landed in Boston, Simone had collected 17 handwritten testimonies. 17 more victims willing to step forward because someone with power had finally been willing to see them. The plane touched down at Logan International at 2:47 p.m. Simone had exactly 1 hour and 13 minutes to get to Boston Children's Hospital, scrub in, review Maya's latest vitals, and begin the surgery that would either save or end an 8-year-old's life. As they deplaned, Patricia touched her arm. "You're going to save that little girl." "I hope so. Then you're going to save a lot more people, just in a different way." Simone walked through the terminal, past travelers, who stared with recognition, past news crews, who shouted questions she didn't answer. Her mind was already shifting into surgical mode, compartmentalizing the trauma of the morning, focusing on the precision required to repair a child's broken heart. But in the back of her mind, a new determination was forming. She would save Maya Chen. And then, somehow, she would help fix a system that was just as broken. A car service waited at arrivals, arranged by the hospital. Simone slid into the back seat, grateful for the silence. Patricia sat beside her, finally closing her laptop, giving Simone space to breathe. Boston traffic crawled through the late afternoon. buildings casting long shadows across the Charles River. Simone watched the city pass, her mind refusing to settle, bouncing between the morning's horror and the surgery ahead. "Tell me about Maya," Patricia said quietly. Simone welcomed the distraction. 8 years old, born with a ventricular septal defect, a hole between the two lower chambers of her heart. But hers is complicated by pulmonary stenosis, a narrowing of the valve that controls blood flow to the lungs. In English, her heart is trying to do 2 jobs with faulty equipment. Every beat is harder than it should be. Without surgery, she'll develop heart failure within months. With surgery, she has a 92% chance of a normal life. And the 8%, surgery doesn't work, or she doesn't survive the procedure. Simone's voice remained clinical. The emotional distance she'd learned to maintain when discussing life and death odds. "I've performed this operation 47 times. 45 were successful. And the other 2, we don't talk about the other 2 before surgery." The car pulled up to Boston Children's Hospital at 3:34 p.m. News vans were already there, their satellite dishes pointing skyward like accusing fingers. Reporters rushed toward the car. "Dr. Wellington, how do you feel? Will this affect your ability to operate? Is your husband filing criminal charges?" Patricia stepped out first, her body language shifting into protective mode. "Dr. Wellington is here to save a child's life. She'll have no comment at this time." They pushed through the crowd, entering the hospital's blessed quiet. Simone had always loved hospitals, the purposeful energy, the smell of antiseptic that meant healing was possible. Here, credentials mattered, skills mattered. The color of your skin meant nothing compared to the steadiness of your hands. Or so she'd always believed. In the surgical wing, she found Lynn and David Chen in the family waiting area. They stood immediately, exhaustion etched into their faces. They'd been living in this hospital for 3 weeks, watching their daughter grow weaker, waiting for the surgeon who might save her. "Dr. Wellington," Lynn Chen said, her voice breaking. "Thank you for coming. We saw what happened. I'm so sorry." The apology struck Simone as profoundly wrong. "You have nothing to apologize for. We were afraid you wouldn't make it, that they'd delay you. Or..." Lynn couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm here," Simone said firmly. "And I'm ready to help Maya." "Can we see her before?" David asked. "Of course." They walked together to the pediatric cardiac unit. Maya Chen lay in bed, small for her 8 years, her skin pale with the grayish tinge that came from a heart not quite delivering enough oxygen. But her eyes were bright, alert, curious. "You're the doctor who's going to fix my heart," Maya said. "It wasn't a question. I'm going to try my very best," Simone replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Did you really get kicked off a plane?" Lynn started to shush her daughter, but Simone shook her head. "Yes, I did. That's not fair." "No, it's not. My mom says you're brave for standing up to them." Simone looked at this child who was about to let strangers cut open her chest, who would trust Simone's hands with her life, who saw the world with the clarity that only children possess. "You're the brave one, Maya. What I did was just refuse to move. What you're about to do takes real courage. Will it hurt? You'll be asleep. When you wake up, you'll feel sore, but then every day you'll get stronger. Will I be able to play soccer?" Simone smiled. "That's the plan. You'll have to take it slow at first, but yes, you'll play soccer." Maya considered this, then held out her pinky finger. "Promise." Simone hooked her pinky with Maya's, the universal gesture of unbreakable vows. "I promise. I'll do everything I can." At 3:55 p.m., Simone left the Chens and headed to the surgical prep area. She scrubbed in with meticulous care, the ritual washing away not just germs but the chaos of the day. Under the hot water, She could finally let her hands shake, just for a moment, releasing the adrenaline that had been building since Kellyanne Pritchard first approached her at Gate 47. Then she steadied, breathed, became the surgeon Maya needed. The surgical team assembled. Dr. Anish Patel, the anesthesiologist, reviewed Maya's vitals. Sandra Williams, the head surgical nurse, a black woman in her 50s with kind eyes and efficient hands, prepared the instruments. Sandra caught Simone's eye. "We've got your back, Doctor." Rousseau. "Thank you. First time?" Sandra asked. "First time what?" "First time having to be superhuman just to be treated human." Simone paused in her preparations. "No. But it never gets easier. 30 years I've worked here," Sandra said quietly. "Still get asked if I'm the janitor. I'm the head surgical nurse. How do you deal with it?" Sandra's smile was sad, but determined. "I save lives. I let my work speak. And when that's not enough, I speak louder." Maya was wheeled in at 4:03 p.m., already sedated, her chest rising and falling with the measured rhythm of anesthesia. So small on the surgical table, her life reduced to numbers on monitors. Heart rate, 68 beats per minute. Blood pressure, 95/60. Oxygen saturation, 89%. Too low. The reason they were here. Simone stood over her, scalpel in hand, the weight of the day finally lifting. Here, she had control. Here, her hands could fix what was broken. "Scalpel," she said, and Sandra placed it perfectly in her palm. The first incision was always the most important, the commitment to the path forward. The blade parted skin, then muscle, then the sternum itself, opening Maya's chest like a book whose story was written in blood and bone. 6 hours stretched ahead. 6 hours where nothing existed except the rhythm of surgery, the call and response of her requests, and Sandra's perfect anticipation. The steady voice of Dr. Patel, calling out vitals. The delicate work of repairing a heart too small to fail. 3 hours in, Maya's blood pressure dropped suddenly. The monitor alarm shrieked. BP dropping. 70/40. Dr. Patel announced, his voice tight with controlled urgency. Simone's hands moved faster than thought, searching for the source. There, a small tear in the pulmonary artery, bleeding into the chest cavity. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, suturing the tear with stitches so tiny they were barely visible. "Bleeding. Controlled," she said after 90 seconds that felt like 90 years. Vitals. BP rising. Back to 90/55. Sandra's eyes above her mask crinkled with relief. "Nice save, doctor." But Simone's heart was pounding. One small tear could have ended everything. Maya was so fragile, balanced on such a narrow edge between life and death. At hour 5, the actual repair of the septal defect complete, they faced the moment of truth. Maya's heart had been stopped for the procedure, kept alive by the bypass machine. Now they had to restart it. "Clear," Simone said. The paddles charged with a high-pitched whine. Shock. The heart muscle jumped but didn't restart. The monitor showed flat line. No rhythm. Sandra reported. Again. Clear. Another shock. Another jump. Still nothing. Simone felt ice in her veins. Not this child. Not today. Not after everything. Once more. Third shock. The monitor beeped. Once. Twice. Then settled into steady rhythm. "We have sinus rhythm." Dr. Patel's voice carried pure relief. Strong and steady. Sandra confirmed. Simone exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath. "Let's close." The final hour was mechanical. Closing the chest wall. Placing drains. Ensuring every vessel was sealed. At 10:47 p.m., she placed the final suture. "Excellent work, everyone," she said. stepping back from the table. Maya was moved to ICU, her parents waiting in the hallway with terrified hope in their eyes. She did great, Simone told them, still in her surgical scrubs. The repair was successful, she's in recovery now, and her vitals are strong. Lin Chen burst into tears. David simply folded, his body sagging with relief, so profound it looked like collapse. Simone caught his arm, steadying him. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." Simone sat alone in the surgeon's lounge, her body suddenly aware of its exhaustion. 14 hours since Shed left her house that morning. 14 hours that had somehow contained a lifetime. Her phone showed 217 missed messages. She called Marcus. "How's Maya?" His voice came immediately. No greeting necessary. Stable. Successful repair. She should make a full recovery. "And how are you?" The question broke something inside her. "Tired. So tired. Come home. I need to monitor her tonight. Then I'm coming to you. Marcus, you have committee votes tomorrow. You're more important than votes. You can't just abandon your responsibilities. Neither can you. So I'm coming to Boston, and we'll both do our jobs." His voice softened. "Let me take care of you, Simone. Just for tonight." She wanted to protest, to maintain her fierce independence. But the truth was, she needed him. Needed his steady presence, his unwavering support, the knowledge that at least one person in the world saw her completely. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll be there in 3 hours." At midnight, Simone checked on Maya in ICU. The little girl's eyes fluttered open, still groggy from anesthesia. "Did it work?" Her voice was barely audible. Simone took her small hand. "You have a strong heart now, Maya." "Thank you, Dr. Wellington." "You're welcome, sweetheart. My mom says you're a hero." Simone thought about the day, about being surrounded by security, about the fear and rage and helplessness. "I'm just a doctor. You can be both," Maya said, her eyes already closing again. Simone sat in the darkness of the ICU, listening to the steady beep of Maya's heart monitor, the rhythm strong and sure. Shed saved this life. Tomorrow, Shed start the work of fixing a broken system. Tonight, she just let herself feel. The Senate hearing room was designed to intimidate. High ceilings, marble columns, rows of seats filled with journalists and lobbyists and citizens hoping to witness history. Simone sat at the witness table, her navy suit perfectly pressed, her natural hair styled in elegant twists, her expression calm despite the cameras pointed at her like weapons. 2 weeks had passed since Gate 47. 2 weeks of recovery for Maya, who was already walking the hospital halls. 2 weeks of media frenzy, her face on every news channel. 2 weeks of Marcus working behind the scenes, building coalition, drafting legislation. Now came the reckoning. The Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation will come to order, announced Senator Patricia Morrison, the committee chair. A stern woman from Oregon known for suffering neither fools nor injustice. "We're here to examine discriminatory practices in air travel, specifically the case of Dr. Simone Wellington and the broader pattern of passenger rights violations." Simone's testimony was scheduled first. Shed spent hours preparing with Patricia Okonkwo and Marcus' legal team. But standing to speak, she abandoned her prepared remarks. "Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Dr. Simone Wellington, though professionally I use my maiden name, Dr. Simone Rousseau. I'm a pediatric cardiac surgeon at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. On November 5th, I was traveling from Chicago to Boston to perform emergency surgery on an 8-year-old girl named Maya Chen." She paused, letting the detail land. "A child, a life, hanging in balance. I arrived at Gate 47 2 hours early. I had a confirmed first-class ticket, purchased 3 weeks prior with my personal credit card. I was accused of credit card fraud without evidence, surrounded by security officers, threatened with arrest, and told I could not board the aircraft. Her voice remained steady, professional, but she let the emotion show in her eyes. The gate agent, Kelly Ann Pritchard, fabricated this accusation to remove me from my seat so she could give it to a Platinum Elite passenger. When I questioned this, when I showed proof of purchase, when I explained that a child would die without my intervention, I was told I was being disruptive. I was told to comply or face arrest. She looked directly at the senators. I'm a surgeon. I'm educated. I'm married to a United States senator. I had every advantage a person could have. And still, I was presumed guilty. I was deemed disposable. My seat was considered available for reassignment to someone more valuable. If this can happen to me, what happens to the single mother who can't afford to miss work? The elderly man who doesn't speak English fluently? The young black woman traveling alone who has no senator husband to call? Senator Morrison leaned forward. Dr. Wellington, in your view, was this an isolated incident or part of a broader pattern? The data shows it's systematic. Simone replied. My legal team has identified over 2,000 similar cases in the past 5 years alone. Passengers of color removed at rates 300% higher than white passengers. Always justified by policy language. Always resulting in no consequences for the airline. She pulled out the stack of handwritten notes she'd collected on the flight to Boston. These are testimonies from just 17 passengers who reached out to me in one 3-hour flight. 17 people who had experienced similar treatment and had nowhere to turn, no one to believe them. Richard Westbrook, CEO of Atlas Airlines, testified next. Impeccably dressed, perfectly coached, radiating corporate sincerity. We deeply regret what happened to Dr. Wellington. It does not reflect our company values or our commitment to serving all passengers equally. Senator Morrison cut through his prepared statement. Mr. Westbrook, how many of the 43 passengers removed by Kelly Ann Pritchard have you contacted with apologies? Westbrook faltered. We're working on compiling that list. It's been 2 weeks. How long does it take to compile a list? The data is stored across multiple systems. But you have the data. Yes. Then contact them. Today. Morrison's voice carried steel. And Mr. Westbrook, do you regret what happened to the other 42 passengers Miss Pritchard removed? Or just the one married to a senator? Westbrook's prepared answer died on his lips. We regret all instances where passengers felt mistreated. Simone interjected. They were mistreated. The data is objective. 38 passengers of color removed on false pretenses to benefit white passengers. That's not feelings. That's mathematics. Kelly Ann Pritchard testified under subpoena. Her confidence from Gate 47 completely vanished. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of public scrutiny. I made mistakes, she said quietly. I was following what I thought was company policy. What policy? Senator Rodriguez from California asked. Show me the written policy that says to remove passengers based on race. It wasn't written. It was the culture. Keep Platinum members happy. Don't let passengers cause problems. And Dr. Wellington caused problems. She questioned my decision. She asked why she was being removed from a seat she paid for. That's causing problems. Kelly Ann had no answer. Gerald Carmichael testified with visible discomfort, his earlier entitlement replaced by something that might have been shame. I accept upgrades when offered. I assumed it earned them through loyalty. Did you ask why Seat 2A became available that morning? Senator Morrison asked. No. Why not? I trusted the airline was following their procedures. even though the procedures included removing a black woman doctor traveling to save a child's life. I didn't know that at the time. Would it have mattered if you did? Gerald paused, and in that silence, his complicity became clear. It should have. Then came the surprise witness. The one Patricia had found during her investigation. Amanda Jefferson, former Atlas Airlines operations coordinator, walked to the witness table with a box of documents. 3 years ago, I was fired for refusing to participate in what they called yield management, Amanda testified. I was told to identify passengers we could remove during overbooking situations. When I asked what criteria to use, my supervisor said, "Use your judgment. Make sure we keep the valuable customers happy." What did you understand that to mean? Senator Morrison asked. Remove the people who wouldn't fight back. The people without power. And in practice, that meant people of color, elderly passengers, people with accents or disabilities. Anyone my supervisors thought looked like they didn't belong in first class. And when you refused, I was written up for insubordination. Then they found reasons to terminate me. Falsified performance reviews. Accusations of policy violations I'd never committed. Amanda's voice shook with suppressed anger. I tried to report it. I filed complaints with HR, with the FAA, with the Department of Transportation. No one cared. I was just one person making accusations against a billion-dollar company. Why didn't you go public? Senator Rodriguez asked. Because who would believe me? I was nobody. I had no platform, no power, no senator husband. She looked at Simone. I'm glad Dr. Wellington fought back. I'm glad someone finally forced people to pay attention. Patricia Okonkwo presented the evidence next, her British accent cutting through the room with prosecutorial precision. We've analyzed 5 years of boarding data from Atlas Airlines and performed preliminary analysis of their competitors. The pattern is consistent and damning. Passengers of color are removed at rates 350% higher than white passengers. These removals are always justified by neutral-sounding policy language. Ticket irregularities, disruptive behavior, safety concerns. But when investigated, 97% are found to be baseless. She displayed charts on the room's screens. This is random bias. This is systematic extraction of value from vulnerable populations. Airlines deliberately overbook, then remove passengers they calculate want to. They save money on compensation, preserve premium passenger loyalty, and bet on the removed passengers, either accepting the treatment or lacking resources to fight back. How long has this been going on? Senator Morrison asked. Based on internal documents, at least 7 years, possibly longer. And the airlines knew. They designed it. Senator, we have memos from industry lobbying groups discussing the profitability of strategic passenger removal. They use phrases like demographic targeting and risk-adjusted displacement, sanitized language for discrimination. The hearing lasted 7 hours. By the end, even the senators who had arrived skeptical looked shaken. Senator Morrison gavelled the session to a close. This committee will recommend immediate federal oversight of airline boarding practices. We will draft legislation banning discriminatory yield management. We will establish a compensation fund for victims. And we will pursue criminal charges against airline executives who knowingly implemented these policies. She looked directly at Westbrook. The era of treating passengers as disposable is over. 6 months passed, like a river cutting through stone, slow but inexorable, carving new channels in the landscape of American justice. The Fair Skies Act passed the Senate 87-13, surprising even its supporters. The House followed with bipartisan approval. Politicians from both parties eager to distance themselves from defending airline discrimination. President signed it into law on a bright April morning, with Simone and Marcus standing behind her. Visible symbols of what had been broken and what might be fixed. The legislation mandated federal oversight of boarding practices, banned discriminatory passenger removal, required quarterly reporting broken down by race, established an independent compensation fund, and created criminal penalties for executives who knowingly implemented bias-based policies. Kelly Ann Pritchard was barred from the airline industry permanently. Dale Hendricks resigned under investigation, later settling a civil suit brought by Amanda Jefferson and 37 other former employees. Richard Westbrook stepped down as CEO, replaced by a black woman from outside the industry tasked with cultural transformation. Gerald Carmichael donated $50,000 to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and began speaking publicly about complicity, about the ease of accepting privilege without questioning its source. But it was the quieter changes that mattered most to Simone. She stood now in her kitchen on a Saturday morning, watching her sons argue over breakfast. Everything and nothing changed. Maya Chen had sent a video the week before, playing in her first soccer game, running without breathlessness, her repaired heart strong and sure. The doorbell rang. Simone opened it to find a young black woman, early 20s, holding a manila folder. "Dr. Wellington? I'm Keisha Thompson. I was removed from a Delta flight in Houston 2 years ago. They said my ticket had an error, but it didn't. I filed a complaint and nothing happened." She held out the folder. "I saw what you did. I want to join the lawsuit." Simone had accepted a part-time position as special advisor to the transportation secretary, splitting her time between surgery and advocacy. Shed resisted at first, wanting to remain just a surgeon, but Maya's words had stayed with her. "You can be both." "Come in," Simone said. "Let's talk." By noon, Shed collected 3 more testimonies. The flood of victims coming forward hadn't stopped, each one representing years of silent endurance, of accepting mistreatment because fighting back seemed impossible. Marcus appeared in her office doorway at 2 p.m., having driven back from Washington for the weekend. "Still working. Always." She smiled, closing her laptop. "But I'm done for today." They took a walk through their Hyde Park neighborhood, the spring air soft and promising. Children played in yards. Neighbors waved. Life continued in its ordinary patterns, though Simone saw it differently now, aware of all the invisible structures that made some paths smooth and others treacherous. "Do you regret it?" Marcus asked. Becoming public like this, Simone considered the question. Shed lost her anonymity, lost the ability to move through the world as just a surgeon. She was recognized everywhere now, sometimes praised, sometimes criticized, always watched. "No," she said finally. "I regret that it was necessary. But I don't regret doing it." Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Class action certified. 437 plaintiffs. Trial date set for September. 437 people willing to step forward, to relive their humiliation in court, to demand accountability. 437 stories that deserve to be heard." The following Tuesday, exactly 1 year after Gate 47, Simone boarded a flight from Chicago to Boston. Same route, same airline, now under new management. Different world. The gate agent, a young black man with kind eyes and professional demeanor, scanned her boarding pass with a smile. "Good morning, Dr. Rousseau. Seat 2A, boarding group 1. Thank you for flying with us." "Thank you," Simone replied, and meant it. As she boarded, the agent called after her. "Dr. Rousseau? My sister was on a flight last month. They tried to remove her, said her ticket had an issue, but she knew her rights because of what you did. She fought back. She kept her seat." Simone turned back, meeting his eyes. "I'm glad. So am I. She's starting medical school in the fall. She says she wants to be like you." In seat 2A, Simone settled in, pulling out her medical journals. Next to her, an elderly white woman smiled nervously. "Excuse me, aren't you Dr. Wellington?" Simone tensed slightly, old reflexes expecting confrontation. "I am. My granddaughter wants to be a surgeon. Could I tell her I met you? She follows all your cases." The tension dissolved. "Of course. What's her name?" They talked for 20 minutes. About medicine and dreams and the barriers that fall when enough people refuse to accept them. The plane lifted off. Chicago falling away beneath them. The sky opening up ahead. Simone thought about Maya Chen, now 9 years old, playing soccer with a heart that beat strong and steady. Thought about Keisha Thompson and the 436 other plaintiffs finally being heard. Thought about the young black man at the gate, his sister starting medical school. Thought about her sons, who would grow up in a world slightly less cruel because their mother had refused to give up her seat. She pulled out her phone, texted Marcus. "Boarding complete. No incidents. Everything normal." His reply came quickly. "Normal is what you made it. Proud of you. Love you. Normal." The words settled around her like a comfortable coat. Not the normal of accepting injustice, but the normal of expecting dignity. Not the normal of silence, but the normal of speaking truth and being believed. The flight attendant stopped by her seat. "Dr. Wellington? The captain wanted you to know he attended your testimony at the Senate hearing. Said it changed how he thinks about his job." Simone smiled. "Tell him I appreciate that." As the plane leveled at cruising altitude, Simone opened her laptop to review notes for her next surgery. But first, she pulled up the draft of her testimony for the upcoming trial. 437 stories to tell. 437 times the system had tried to make people disappear. Not anymore. She began to write. Outside the window, clouds stretched endlessly. White and pure, full of possibility. Somewhere below, in cities across America, gate agents were scanning boarding passes, making decisions about who belonged and who didn't. But now they knew they were being watched. Now they knew there would be consequences. Kellyanne Pritchard had tried to take Simone's seat. Instead, Simone had taken her power, had transformed her humiliation into legislation, had turned her anger into advocacy, had proven that being seen as less than didn't mean accepting less than. She thought about the question reporters always asked, how does it feel to be a symbol? The truth was complicated. Shed never wanted to represent anything beyond her own skills, her own achievements. But symbols matter when systems are broken. Someone has to stand in the gap, has to say this is wrong, and force people to listen. She could be both, surgeon and activist, individual and symbol, doctor, Simone Rousseau and Senator Wellington's wife. All of it true, none of it diminishing the rest. The flight landed in Boston on time. Simone gathered her things, preparing to visit Maya at her 6-month checkup. As she walked through Logan Airport, she passed Gate 47, different airline, different crew, different world. She paused, just for a moment, at the spot where security had surrounded her, where Kellyanne had smiled her cold smile, where everything had changed. A young Latina woman stood there now, checking her boarding pass nervously. She looked up, caught Simone's eye, recognition dawning. "Dr. Wellington." "Yes, thank you." Just those 2 words, but weighted with everything they contained. Simone nodded, continued walking. The work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. But it was begun, and that mattered. She had a patient to see, a lawsuit to win, a system to change. And tonight, she'd go home to Marcus and her sons, to the ordinary life that she'd fought so hard to keep. Tomorrow, she'd keep fighting. Because that's what you do when they try to take your seat. You don't just get it back, you make sure they can never take anyone else's. What would you have done in Simone's position? Would you have called your senator husband immediately? Or tried to fight the injustice on your own? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. And if you believe this story shows why we need continued vigilance against discrimination in all its forms, hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on real stories of injustice and the brave people who fight back. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their voice matters, that their dignity is worth defending, that standing up to power is always the right choice. Thank you for watching, for caring, for believing that we can build a world where everyone gets to keep the seat they paid for, where everyone is treated with the dignity they deserve, where justice isn't just for those with power, but for everyone brave enough to demand it. May you always have the courage to stand your ground. May you always know your worth, and may you never, ever let anyone tell you that you don't belong in spaces you've earned the right to occupy. Until next time, keep fighting, keep believing, keep demanding better, because change starts with one person refusing to move. This story teaches us that discrimination thrives in silence and dies when exposed to light. Dr. Simone Wellington's experience reveals that systemic bias doesn't always wear a hood or shout slurs. Sometimes it hides behind corporate policies, customer service language, and the presumption that certain people simply don't belong in spaces they've paid to occupy. The first lesson is that credentials and accomplishments don't shield you from prejudice. Simone was a renowned surgeon, married to a senator, yet still presumed guilty. If someone with every advantage can be victimized, imagine what happens to those without power or platform. Second, systems protect themselves until forced to change. Kellyanne Pritchard wasn't an isolated bad actor. She was following an unwritten but well-understood culture that prioritized profit over dignity. Real change required not just firing one employee, but dismantling the structures that enabled discrimination. Third, allyship matters. Patricia Okonkwo, Officer Lopez, Sandra Williams, and the passengers who spoke up all played crucial roles. Justice isn't achieved alone. It requires people willing to use their privilege, platform, or simply their voice to stand with the vulnerable. Finally, you don't have to accept injustice just because fighting back is hard. Simone could have quietly taken another flight, avoided the confrontation, protected her privacy. Instead, she stood her ground and transformed her personal humiliation into systemic reform. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to move. So here's my question for you. If you witnessed someone being treated like Dr. Wellington at an airport, would you speak up or stay silent? Drop your honest answer in the comments below. And if this story moved you, if it made you think differently about the small injustices we witness every day, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel, because we're committed to sharing stories that expose inequality and celebrate the courage it takes to fight back. These aren't just stories. They're lessons in dignity, resistance, and the power of refusing to accept less than you deserve. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by how others treat them. Share it with young people who need to see that standing up to power is possible. Share it with anyone who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong. Thank you for watching, for caring, for taking the time to understand that discrimination isn't always obvious, but it's always wrong. Thank you for being the kind of person who believes everyone deserves respect, regardless of their title, their connections, or the color of their skin. May you always have the courage to speak truth to power. May you recognize injustice when you see it, and have the strength to call it out. And may you never forget that real change happens when ordinary people decide that enough is enough. Keep fighting for what's right. Keep believing in justice. And never, ever let anyone convince you that you should accept less than your full humanity. Until next time, stand strong, speak loud, and remember, Your seat is yours. Don't let anyone take it.